Welcome back to 100 Pounds Down, where we preach the gospel of GLP-1 and the word is good. If you've been considering taking meds like Mounjaro, Zepbound, Ozempic, or Wegovy, you're already in the middle of your weight loss journey, or you're heading toward that maintenance phase and wondering, what comes next? Bring it in. This video is sponsored by NeuroCruise, a special event hosted by my company, JKD Global Travel. Sail away with us May 29th on the Virgin Voyages Valiant Lady for a 4-night cruise from Miami to Key West and Virgin's private beach club on the island of Bimini in the Bahamas. Book now at neurocruise.com. So, this is Bootcamp 2. Before you can understand the science of how this medication works, you really need to understand how your body works, and that's what these videos are about. In our last video, we learned about the important parts of your pancreas and your gut and how they play a part in managing your body's glucose levels. Now, if you haven't seen Bootcamp Part 1 yet, I highly recommend that you go back and watch that first, because this will build on that and then come on back. The beauty of having YouTube and videos is that you can always hit pause and come back later. This video, we will be focusing on your metabolism, metabolic resistance, and the chronic disease process of obesity. Your metabolism is the chemical process that takes place inside your body as it converts the food you eat into energy that keeps you alive and functioning. Your metabolism is the generator that powers you, and calories are the amount of power it uses. As a concept related to the human body, calories can be confusing. That's because we talk about them like they're an object, but in reality, they're nothing more than a unit of measurement. And again, here's where I toss out my disclaimer that I'm taking some liberties here by having a much more simplified explanation, just so we can keep things clear. The same way a watt is a unit of measurement that tells you how much power a light bulb has, a calorie is a unit of measurement that tells you how much power comes from the foods you eat when they're converted to energy inside your body. Your basal metabolic rate, or your BMR, is the minimum number of calories that it takes for your body to continue to function while you're resting. Essentially, if you stayed in bed and did nothing but stare at the ceiling for an entire day, your BMR is the number of calories, aka the amount of energy it would take simply to maintain the tasks that keep you alive that day, like digestion, breathing, pumping blood, and the like. On any given day, keeping you alive takes up around 2/3 of the energy that's available in your system. The other third goes toward converting your food into fuel and powering your physical movement. Now it's time for our first knowledge check. What is the chemical process of converting the food you eat into energy to maintain your bodily functions? Your metabolism. What does a calorie measure? The amount of power that comes from the foods you eat when they're converted to energy inside your body. How much of the energy in your body is spent on simply keeping you alive? Two-thirds. Remember how in Bootcamp 1, we talked about how your pancreas sends out glucagon and insulin to tell your body to use or store sugar for energy? With this new information we've learned, we can now introduce a new name for that process. It's glucose metabolism. We had to talk about that first so you could get an idea of how blood sugar is involved in this process, but that was only part of the story. It's a little more complicated than that. That's because your body actually uses 2 energy production and storage processes in order to be more efficient, one for sugar and the other for fat. There are 3 primary macronutrients in the food we eat: carbohydrates or sugar, protein, and lipids or fat. Calling something a macronutrient is just a fancy way of saying that these are the nutrients that make up the biggest part of our diet. There are others, but for purposes here, we'll focus on those three. Carbs, protein, and fat each convert to energy in your body, and the amount is measurable using calories. 1 gram of carbohydrate converts to 4 calories of energy, and the same is true for 1 gram of protein. Fat, however, is the most calorically dense macronutrient. Each gram of fat converts to a power-packed 9 calories worth of energy. This is what people are referring to when they say they're counting calories or counting carbs. Converted carbohydrate and protein energy is stored in your liver and muscles until the sugar and amino acids that they've been broken down into are used to fuel or repair your body. And this is where I have to take a quick but necessary detour to explain proteins, which honestly are pretty cool. Proteins are interesting because they're not just an energy source. They also work as sort of a jack of all trades building block within your body. Your body is really resourceful, and proteins are one really elegant way of showing that off. Think of proteins like a bunch of cars in an auto salvage lot. Say you're rebuilding a classic car from scratch and you just need that one special part to finish things. You might look around and find a part from a completely different model than the one you're working on, but notice how it still works perfectly for your needs. So you go ahead and install it. That's essentially what proteins often do inside your body. For example, if you get into a situation where your blood sugar level drops dangerously low because you don't have enough glucose, your liver can take protein, break it down into amino acids, and turn that into glucose for energy, a process called gluconeogenesis. Gluco meaning sugar, neo meaning new, and genesis meaning creation, the creation of new sugar-based energy from non-sugar source materials. You know what time it is. Time for another knowledge check. What are the 3 primary macronutrients? Carbohydrates, sugar, protein, and lipids, or fat. How many calories are in 1 gram of each of a carbohydrate, a protein, and a fat? Carbs have 4 calories, protein has 4 calories, and fat has 9 calories. What is gluconeogenesis? The creation of new sugar-based energy from non-sugar source materials. Now, let's talk about the second energy usage and storage process that occurs in your body, the one for fats, also known as lipid metabolism. Adipocytes are fat cells, and they are the long-term storage facility of your body. Their primary job is storing energy from lipids. The collection of these fat cells is called adipose tissue, or body fat. To make this easier as we go along, I'll refer to the fat you eat as dietary fat, and the fat your body stores as body fat. As I mentioned earlier, converted carbohydrate and protein energy is meant for short-term storage inside your liver and muscles until the sugar and amino acids they're broken down into can be used to fuel or repair your body. When the amount of food you take in is more energy than can readily be used in the short term, your liver needs some place to put all that extra energy. So it will convert that energy into body fat and send it to your fat cells so it can be used in the future. This process of creating fat from non-lipid sources is called lipogenesis. Lipo meaning fat, and genesis meaning creation. The creation of new lipid-based energy from non-lipid source materials. That newly created fat can't get where it's going on its own, though. Fat can't travel in your bloodstream, so your liver combines it with protein so it can get where it needs to go. We've talked about the creation of body fat, so now we need to talk about the destruction. When people talk about burning fat, they're referring to a process called lipolysis, the process of the body breaking down stored fat into fatty acids to use as energy, to keep us warm, and for insulation. So let's revisit our old friends from the pancreas for a moment. As we learned in Bootcamp 1, your pancreas secretes insulin and glucagon, which modulate your blood sugar levels. Those two hormones also have roles in lipid metabolism. Insulin stimulates lipogenesis, and glucagon stimulates lipolysis. Time for another knowledge check. What is the process of creating fat from non-lipid sources called? Lipogenesis. True or false? Insulin lowers blood sugar and stimulates the creation of fat. True. What process are people referring to when they speak about burning fat? Lipolysis. When you regularly take in more energy than your body uses, your adipose tissue expands in two ways. First, your individual fat cells grow larger in size, and second, your body starts to make more new fat cells to handle the volume of fat that is being stored. Body fat near the surface level, the layer right underneath your skin, is called subcutaneous fat. If that continues to happen over a long period of time, your body runs out of space and begins to create those new fat cells in places where adipose tissue isn't supposed to be, like in or around your liver, your heart, your pancreas, or even your muscle. This type of body fat is called visceral fat. When the food you eat is high in dietary fat or high in carbohydrates, the excess body fat is stored in a format called a triglyceride. Everyone's body has triglycerides, but this format can be dangerous when there's too much of it because the fatty acids that are released when triglycerides are burned can be toxic at the cellular level, promoting cell dysfunction and cell death. In addition, scientists now know that adipose tissue isn't inert. For years, they thought it was just neutral, but now it's confirmed that adipose tissue secretes hormones that trigger a chronic inflammatory response throughout the body, as well as chemicals that blunt our ability to properly respond to insulin. So, when we put those three concepts together, when the food we eat is high in dietary fat or high in carbohydrates, and we're regularly eating more energy than our bodies can spend, and our bodies have gotten to the point where they are creating new fat cells in places where fat cells shouldn't be, the fat that is stored in that visceral fat is the most dangerous fat of all because it is toxic on a cellular level and dangerous for our internal organs. In the pancreas, this cellular destruction impairs the ability to properly secrete insulin, and in some cases can lead to the inability to create insulin at all. Your muscles, fat, and liver stop responding effectively to insulin, which hampers their ability to pull glucose and fats from your blood and store them. This dysfunction is called metabolic resistance. But that's only one way that this process occurs, because that information assumes that every person started from a genetically, a hormonally, and a pharmacologically neutral standpoint. Scientists have also proven that genetic propensity, the use of certain medications, and the presence of other overlapping medical conditions, among other factors, can absolutely have an impact on a person's propensity or susceptibility toward metabolic resistance. Regardless of the underlying inciting cause, the longer this continues to occur over time, the more dysfunctional things begin to get. Destructive changes at the cellular level can also alter the processes of lipogenesis and lipolysis themselves, leading to abnormalities in weight gain and the difficulty in weight loss. When it's put all together, this constellation of conditions and disease processes, along with chronic inflammation and the resulting increase in risks for cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, fatty liver disease, kidney and gallbladder disease, comprises the chronic disease of obesity. It's a lot. Yeah, so let's do another knowledge check. What type of fat is located in or around your internal organs? Visceral fat. What format of stored fat is the most dangerous? Triglycerides. What is the constellation of conditions and disease processes, chronic inflammation, and risk of adverse health impacts called? Obesity. So that's the tea on how your body works, part 2. Was there anything new that you learned about the metabolic process here or obesity today? Let me know in the comments. So now that we finally got that deep background on some of these processes under our belts, now we can finally move to the final video in this Bootcamp Explainer series, where we'll go into the mechanics of GLP-1 medications and how they work in our bodies. So stay tuned. If you think weight loss injections could be right for you, talk to a medical professional, preferably an endocrinologist or an obesity medicine specialist, because those are the doctors who know these medications and how they work the best. As always, I'm not a doctor and I'm not a representative of any pharmaceutical company. I'm just one woman who's sharing her experiences and her own opinions. And if you find my channel or content helpful, make sure you hit that trifecta: like, subscribe, notifications, and I'll see you on the other side.